welcome to the programme. Two men have been arrested in connection with the killing of prominent Turkish journalist Hrant Dink. Dink, who'd been convicted of insulting Turkishness in one of his articles, was shot dead outside his newspaper office in Istanbul.
Hundreds of people have poured to the scene of the murder, which Turkey's Prime Minister has described as an attack on the nation's unity. Nazanin Moshiri has more.
It's a disturbing scene. The body of Hrant Dink lies at the spot where he was shot dead. It's believed a gunman fired 3 bullets as Dink was leaving his newspaper offices in Istanbul. The police have cordoned off the area as they search for whoever's responsible. His friends and colleagues could only look on in horror. His brother, who arrived at the scene a short time after the shooting, was inconsolable. He was one of the most prominent voices of Turkey's shrinking Armenian community, the editor of the bilingual Turkish Armenian newspaper Agos. He was a controversial figure because he spoke out about the mass killings of Armenians by the Turks at the beginning of the 20th century. Many Turkish nationalists believed that made him a traitor. Dink was prosecuted under Turkey's strict laws against insulting Turkishness for those views. A law campaigners say must now be reviewed.
And with such a murder, we hope the European Union will put pressure on Ankara to change, and not only to speak about change for the criminal code.
The focus now will be on the manhunt for his murderer. Turkish television's reporting 2 suspects have been arrested. In interviews, Dink often talked of his fellow countrymen's hatred for him. He may well have been right if it turns out his assassin is Turkish. Nazanin Moshiri, Al Jazeera.
Hrant Dink was one of the most prominent voices of Turkey's shrinking Armenian community. He'd gone on trial several times, charged with insulting Turkishness. He had spoken out about the mass killings of Armenians by Turks from 1896 to 1921. Back then, millions of Armenians lived within the borders of the Ottoman Turkish Empire. But as the empire edged towards collapse, many Armenians were killed in the ensuing violence. The killings peaked during the First World War, when the Armenian minority sided with the Russians against Turkey. Armenia says 1.5 million people were killed through a policy of deliberate genocide. Turkey denies this was genocide. Ankara admits many Armenians were killed, but says many Turks died too. Massacres were committed by both sides during the war. It's illegal to call for the recognition of the Armenian genocide under Turkish law. 20 countries, including Russia, Canada and Uruguay, have formally recognized the killings as genocide. In October, France passed a bill making it a crime to deny the killings constituted genocide. Ankara reacted angrily, threatening to cut trade ties.
There's expectations that Lebanon's opposition parties, including Hezbollah, are about to step up their campaign to topple the government. Well, for more on this, we can cross to our correspondent Rula Amin, who's in Beirut. Rula, Hezbollah and their supporters calling a general strike. Why are they doing this?
Well, Hezbollah and the opposition feel they need to add more pressure on the government. After more than 40 days of sitting in front of the Prime Minister's office, they feel this was not enough to bring the government down. And what they're saying now, they want to make their voices heard louder. And especially that on the January 25th, that's about in less than a week, Prime Minister Senora will be in Paris at what it's called the Paris 3 conference. This is a donors conference where Secretary Rice will be there, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Arab countries. All are there to pledge support, financial support for Lebanon, but also political support. And the opposition feels that they need to send their message that this government does not represent all of Lebanon. They want their voices to be heard, and they feel they need to put more pressure on the government. And so they have been telling us for the past week that they have a variety of measures that they will take in order to add more pressure. Now, so far, they have been saying it's going to be peaceful and they will stick to the law, but we still don't know if that is going to be the case.
And Rula, how is Senora likely to stand up to this pressure? Because he's already been subject to these mass demonstrations that we've seen over the past few weeks. He has said that he won't be forced from office, but how is he likely to react to this new stepping up of the campaign?
Yes, as you said, Prime Minister Siniora had made it clear he's not stepping down under the pressure of the streets. And he has already said that a few weeks ago, and he reiterated that last week. And yesterday he said these protests are futile. The only way to resolve the problems in Lebanon is to sit at the table, negotiate, and find some kind of a solution. But the opposition says that when they sat at the table, that didn't work, and that's why they took to the streets. So for now, Prime Minister Siniora has a lot of backing from the international community, from the Western government, from Arab government, and this donors conference is going to be another show of support and faith in the Siniora government. And that's why the opposition feels it needs to stand up and say something now as this conference is going on, because they don't want this government to be able to adapt to the protests.
Rula, for now, thank you very much for that. Rula Amin reporting from Beirut there.
Let's go back to our top story, and for more reaction on the killing of Mr. Hrant Dink, let's join on the phone from Ankara Mr. Ilnur Çevik, the editor of the New Anatolian newspaper. Mr. Çevik, what was the assassin trying to achieve by killing Mr. Dink?
Well, as far as we can see, it is an attempt to create turmoil in Turkey, to create domestic violence in Turkey, and disrepute the country, because, you see, Hrant Dink was threatened all the time. He was receiving life threats, and this was constant. He had been subjected to a court case where he allegedly had been insulting the Turkish state. During that court case, these ultra-nationalists in Turkey were demonstrating against him. So it could be any of those groups, or it could be somebody who wants to create serious turmoil, domestic turmoil in Turkey, because, as you know, this is a crucial year. This year, we are going to elect the new president, and we're going to have parliamentary elections. So somebody could be doing this to disrupt the country and to derail the democratic system. So, because we've seen this before, in the 80s, in the early 90s, intellectuals, journalists were being assassinated, and apparently certain death squads who were used by some illegal fractions within the state were involved in this. So you see, the problem is now we are fearing, and I'm very concerned, that this may be the beginning of a new campaign of assassinations. I hope it's not. I hope it's an isolated case where a hothead has gone and killed a very nice Armenian, unfortunately.
You mentioned that you mentioned that you hope it was just a hothead. Any news on who the two suspects arrested are?
No, these are they are being questioned because they fitted to the description of the eyewitnesses, but they are just being held and questioned. It is said that whoever this killer was a 18 to 19-year-old, a lean man. Now, they're after this person, and in Taksim Square, in the heart of Istanbul, the police picked up two people who they felt could be the assassin. One of the assassins.
Now, looking at the bigger picture, would this incident maybe give leverage to the EU, for instance, to put pressure on Turkey to revise its penal code?
Well, yes, it could, but the problem is Turkish-EU relations seems to be in the freezer at the moment because of the Greek Cypriot insistence. The European Union has shelved most of the accession talks, and the chapters on accession talks are all being shelved. So, I mean, you know, there's not too much incentive for the European Union and Turkish relations to improve at the moment anyway. So the leverage is not really there at the moment.
Mr. Ilnur Çevik, editor of the New Anatolian newspaper, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Palestinian Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh has rejected conditions imposed by Israel before the release of a further $500 million collected on behalf of the Palestinian Authority.
Earlier, Israel transferred $100 million to the office of the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. It came just before a meeting between Abbas and the EU's top diplomat Javier Solana. John Terrett reports.
Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas with the European Union Foreign Policy Chief Javier Solana. The two men met in the West Bank town of Ramallah on Friday to discuss greater European involvement in the Middle East peace process.